ancient family farmhouse at the edge of civilization, the mother, caught in a routine of cleaning and cooking, has long since become distant from the father, and he begins to fuck the only daughter. Eventually, the oldest son notes this, and, half out of a sense of hunger and half out of a sense of wanting to possess and protect the girl, he begins to fuck her too. Taking part in a kind of silent power struggle, the father begins to fuck the oldest son in his ass.
In his ass?
Do you guys want to hear this fucking story or not? Okay, this is literature. Literature. Okay? This is smart stuff here. Alright? You think that people can just write about families fucking each other and fucking pigs and having man-pig sows? You think that just comes to fucking anyone? Another year passes, and after about a year of this, the youngest son tries to fuck the middle son, but finds out he isn't allowed. Instead, he goes into the barn and begins to fuck the littlest sow.
Papa, I'm bored! Star Wars! Star Wars now!
No, we're not going to see Star Wars. Do you hear me?
Raw! Unlimited power!
Okay, boys. Let's go see Star Wars.
Star Wars!
You guys like?
We like what?
I don't know. Do you like anything?
No, not too much. You know.
Trivia question.
Okay.
How much did Disney pay for Lucasfilms and the rights to Star Wars?
$4 billion, right?
Yeah.
4.1 billion.
Which seems kind of like a low number. I mean, like in the world of entertainment,
I mean,
for one person though, it's just like a one-off purchase.
Yeah,
and he still has like rights, and his name's all over it.
He still has some rights for some Star Wars stuff, like toys maybe, or.
I would imagine with the shrewd person that he is and the whole marketing thing behind the first Star Wars that he probably was like, oh, well, I'd like to at least retain some toy rights.
He's got created by it too.
Except for I had a Secret Santa last week for work, and the dude who I got for Secret Santa loves Star Wars. And so I went to Target to get his shit, and I was walking through the toy aisle, and it was like Marvel and LOL, and there were like aisles and aisles, and I was like, where are the fucking Star Wars? And I went to the aisle, and there was literally like just this one little section of Star Wars toys. Yeah. It was way less than the other
Do you
big
think it just
media
didn't
titans.
do well after the last movie? So
I don't know that children particularly like Star Wars in the same way that they like Marvel and things like that.
You said LOL. It was emoji toys?
They're like those surprise doll things that come in like an egg, and it's all mysterious, and you open it and you get like one of 800 variants of LOL dolls that they've created, and they're like just these little plastic things.
Those are going to be worth something someday.
Yeah, Gigi doesn't get to them first, that's for sure.
Gigi's Addison's dog.
Yeah. Thank you.
She's very rambunctious.
Thank you for clarifying that. She's very rambunctious. So I just thought that was interesting. Like, it made me think that, yeah, there probably is a good chance that children aren't absorbing this material with the same fervor that middle-aged to younger bearded men.
Half
black and white men.
I remember
bearded men and men who try to grow beards.
Yes.
I used to have the Phantom Menace Anakin Padawan Racer blanket set or bedsheet set, and I had that until I was like at least 21, and it was really good. And I just remember it was all faded, and it's nice. I loved Star Wars. I used to have the Pod Racer toys, and it was. Yeah. I fucking was obsessed with Star Wars toys. Yeah, didn't necessarily know Star Wars.
When you wake me up still playing with your
well, you don't. I bought you all these toys, and you don't want to fucking play with me.
You have your Lance Peter over Jackson's naked body as he's sleeping.
Come in the shower.
Well, in Beggar's Canyon, that's my ass.
I'm planning to duck.
Serpent.
Shields are down.
That's my asshole.
Yeah, I had said to Jackson too while we were sitting in the theater. I think actually on walking out I saw one, but there were pretty much no children in this movie theater tonight. And there have been children in like Venom. I remember there being kids there. Halloween, when we went to go see Halloween, there were children there.
Right.
At like an 8:00 showing.
Yeah.
They like somebody was like, "Sorry, we gotta see Halloween."
I know you have school in the morning, but we have to
But we've got to see this movie the day before it releases, so
Right.
we can talk to our
I have
coworkers
to
about
keep
it.
you up late and show you people getting murdered.
Right. It was wild. No, it made me. I had a very like deep, soulful thought spree. I don't know how else to put that. While I was watching this movie, like it made me feel so many things that were completely irrespective of what was going on screen. I was just thinking about like myself and the old Bible verse, like when I was a man, I put childish things down or something like that, and how truly strange it was to be sitting in a theater watching this movie with a bunch of other adults. That is like that it was a fucking cartoon. Like this movie was pure and simple, just a cartoon. All of the beats, the dialogue, everything was fucking cartoonish.
So we should jump into it.
Hello. Welcome to episode 37 of To Be Honest.
37. Wow, we went back in time.
We're back in time.
This is episode 3 of To Be Honest.
It's like the Avengers episode.
Episode 9.
We're just going back and back, and we're just gonna keep going back.
Yeah. I am Addison,
I'm Josh.
Jackson.
and we saw Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah, this is a Star
Star
Wars
Wars.
film. This was a Star Wars film.
You're saying Star Wars, right?
Yes.
You're not saying Storage Wars.
No.
For some reason, like leading up to this, for the life of me, I couldn't remember the Rise of Skywalker part. I was like, Revenge of Skywalker,
Mm-hmm.
Rise of the Sith, Skywalker.
Revenge of the Sith.
I kept wanting to say Rise of the Skywalker. I couldn't get that one out of my head. Yeah.
You're right. I wanted to add the in there as well.
Yeah, so this is episode 9. It is the last in the 9-part series of the Skywalker clan in Star Wars.
Skywalker saga.
The
Skywalker
Wars.
saga first started in 1977 with the release of Star Wars: A New Hope, directed and I believe written by George Lucas.
He did write that one. The one until 99, 97 or whatever.
I think that's right. Yeah, because Lawrence Kasdan wrote Empire Strikes Back, and I think Lawrence Kasdan and maybe one other guy wrote Return of the Jedi.
John Terrio wrote Return of the Jedi.
Oh, did he really? Oh.
He wrote Revenge of the Skywalkies.
Oh, okay. And then, of course, we had the prequels in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then Star Wars largely lay dormant for a while and was still special, sort of, at that point, even with the prequels, which did everything that they could to tarnish the legacy, but, they weren't released on a yearly schedule or anything, so people still had kind of a fondness for it. And now here we are in 2019, 5 films deep in the last 5 years or so?
It was like someone, like a child, like put their hand on the stove and burned themselves. And then they're like, whoa, I'm not doing that again.
This is the Disney child.
Right. Well, no, this is just some child, and then, years go by, and it's like, oh, this stove's hot, but I think I can figure it out.
Oh, this
and
is
they
Lucasfilm.
touch the stove again,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, shit, it's
You-
still hot, and it
You
hurts.
got me again. You got me again.
You got me. Let's do it one more
It's a
time.
different child, though, because you had George Lucas, who learned his lesson. Hard to say what's going through his head, but then you have Disney coming in, and
Don't
they're
destroy
immediately
my
like
analogy.
just revving up the money machine.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together.
This is the third of the mainline trilogy. There have been 2 outlying films, Rogue One and Solo. So it started with Force Awakens, and then we have the Last Jedi, the very controversial Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson. And then we have the book ended by J.J. Abrams, Force Awakens, and Rise of Skywalker. So now everyone's caught up, as if anyone was in the dark about
We can go back.
where
You're
this
going
was
way
at.
too fast for me.
Um,
How many Star Wars movies are there?
and I guess we could get into some of the controversy behind the camera. I don't really feel that it's necessary. What do you guys think?
It's all out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
The controversy behind what?
I think what's notable
series.
here is
Oh.
that the first of this trilogy was directed by J.J. Abrams, then it was directed by Rian Johnson,
Yes.
and then this one was written and directed by J.J. Abrams, like the first one did,
Yes.
which was a weird way of doing it, which it wasn't originally the plan to have J.J. Abrams come back. I think they had like Gareth Edwards.
They
is
did.
his name.
They had
who
Gareth
did the
Edwards on tap.
Jurassic World.
No, that's Colin
Yeah,
Trevorrow.
Gareth Edwards
Oh,
did.
he did Godzilla, right? Or
Gareth Edwards did Godzilla. Colin Trevorrow did Jurassic World.
okay, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I think they just figured, well, might as well bring J.J. Abrams back, you know?
The nostalgia master,
Yeah.
the man that we go to reboot our franchises and bootleg our childhood memories.
He is really like the nostalgia harnesser. And that's really what he did with the first ones. Like, you know, he remade A New Hope.
Right, exactly. That's what everyone said after it was made, is this is basically just A New Hope Part D.
soft reboot.
It's all the same beats. And, you know, you're just...
And it has the same character types. You have the lovable rogue, and you have the talented, gifted person with a mysterious past, and of course then you have the mainstays of Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and the late Carrie Fisher, although she wasn't late then. I mean, she might have been on set. She really liked to booze, I know. As Leia,
Rest in peace.
Organa Skywalker.
Italians in space.
Can we just talk about, like, I know this has been talked about before, and it's not a new idea by any means, but just how, like, it was interesting that all the alien species in this movie talked in, like, perfect American or English accents to kind of avoid, I think, the longstanding criticism that all of Star Wars aliens are just, like, thinly veiled racial stereotypes. They're like,
This is my slave. You're going to take Anakin's way good work. I'll give you very good price.
They're in the ventilation chest.
What's that?
Episode 1, baby.
Oh, the big alien guys in the opening scene.
That's right.
Who are just Japanese.
Japanese guys. That was,
Yikes,
with
yeah.
the exception of, like, a couple of the aliens. Like, we had the Mexican mechanic, like, little
That's right.
guy. What was his name? Like, Buck Fu or
Bogo freak.
Bogo Freak.
That's what I think he said.
But the majority of them were these, like, fucked up looking aliens that were like, I got your back now, Poe. Don't worry about it. Coming up on your 6, buddy.
They're like Disney cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah.
The inversion is that all the humanoid people are like European or French or West African or something, where they're all super diverse. And then, I guess to avoid the racial stereotypes, you don't have cartoonish characters speaking like they're Italian or Japanese or Jewish.
Russian or Jewish, yeah, any of those things, which I thought was interesting. I didn't get the sense from this one that it was as SJW a movie as The Last Jedi was.
Oh, well, I gotta tell you something.
I mean, and I guess why I mean that is that I didn't feel like there was as much of an emphasis on inclusion, and that's probably because there was so much shit crammed into this movie. There was no time to ever let a scene breathe to, like, maybe have that sort of...
Kathleen Kennedy's like, oh shit, where do we put our group of women charging into battle? we gotta do it.
We gotta do it.
Endgame, we gotta beat Endgame and have 50 women charge into battle. They couldn't figure it out.
They couldn't...
It's there. It's just stuffed in there with everything else.
It felt more to me like everything was just, like, bleached. And not in that everything was white, just that everything was very, like, sanitized and clean and safe. And so they were going to have those. Like, Rose is still in the movie, obviously, who is
Barely.
barely, but she was part of the controversy of The Last Jedi. So she's there. It's just that she only has a few talking parts, and there's not a lot of emphasis on it.
And Rian Johnson kind of set her up as like the love interest of Finn. Like at the end, they have a kiss, and then she passes out. And this one, like they barely know each other.
They go.
Right.
He goes.
They do.
We're gonna do this, and then that's the only interaction that they have together.
Buddy,
And then
rebellion.
they come back to this idea, like J.J. Abrams was wrestling these characters back from Rian Johnson for the majority of the movie, and I use characters very lightly.
I think that's why he came back too, was because you ruined it.
Yeah, Finn's supposed to love Rey. It's supposed to be a biracial love relationship.
We're not alone.
But before we continue talking about this movie, can I get your guys' thoughts on what you thought overall? Because I want to, just so I don't want to disagree with you,
Oof.
like last time. I wanna have
Overall,
a different opinion.
and I guess at this point it's probably out in the open, but yeah, we're not gonna fuck around with any no spoiler bullshit. This is
spoilers.
Just spoilers. This just we're gonna talk about this movie in full. So you've been warned if you care. So Jackson, what did you think of Rise of the Skywalker?
I didn't like it as a whole. Maybe there's a couple things I liked about it where I was just like, well, maybe if they took that and spent maybe 3 movies developing that part of it, it would have been interesting. But you know, it just, I feel like the overall consensus that I've heard, I agree with, where this is a very rushed and half thought out, half baked, story, just trying to basically fit what J.J. Abrams wanted to do with like the full trilogy into this movie. And it relies on just kind of action to kind of push things forward. And it felt kind of bland. The ending is really unsatisfying and cartoonish in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Don't
You take my cartoonish. That is my buzzword for this motherfucker.
It felt cheap, and I did not enjoy it.
Okay.
Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
Cartoonish was the thought that I had going through my head the whole time. Also too, that this is like a parody. It's basically become a parody of itself at this point of what a Star Wars movie is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like everyone has said, overstuffed with plot that goes nowhere. I agree with you. There may be things like whatever the MacGuffin was, the green triangle thing that she had been searching for.
The Sith transport.
The
Sith
waypoint.
tracker.
The waypoint, whatever it was. Like if that had been introduced in the first movie as like under a guise, right? Like it wasn't the waypoint to find the Emperor or something like that. But if that had been like something in the background of a narrative thrust of the whole thing, then I probably would have accepted it more than I did in the movie, because it just shows up. There was like it reminded me of like a pull start lawnmower, where they'd pull it and the blade would get going a little bit and then it would just die, and they pull it again, and because there were like a handful of moments where I felt that kind of Star Wars magic, if you will, but then the majority of it just felt so cheesy. Just so goddamn cheesy.
What do you think, Josh?
So you didn't like it, and you didn't like it.
Josh loved it.
So here's the thing: is for 2 hours and 24 minutes, it kind of reminded me of Endgame from this respect. Like even though I didn't love it, it didn't necessarily drag its feet at any point. So
I agree.
I wasn't like ever like, when the fuck is this gonna be over? It moved so fast.
When you realize they're going into the final act, you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess we're here.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking. We probably should be moving to the final act now. Let's wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. So
I agree. Oh, yeah, I agree at that point. I didn't like it either. I just want to make sure we're on the same
I
point.
thought you were about to say, I loved it.
Well,
I thought you were gonna drop bombs.
no, I don't. No, I did kind of want to like it.
I did too.
Until the opening 10 seconds, and then I decided I won't like it.
See, I have to disagree with you on that, because I actually thought that the first 10 or 15 seconds were kind of cool.
Oh, because it's the text scroll. I'm sorry.
No, not
After
the
the
text scroll.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
I actually liked the bit with Adam Driver in the very beginning.
Okay.
Like where it's like in slow motion and it's brutal and he's just like slaughtering people. It felt like one of the best examples of this like disgusting thirst for power that the Sith have, and how they'll stop at nothing and slaughter and blah blah blah. Like, it felt fairly visceral, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
I was intrigued by the idea that he was fighting the Emperor too, because he didn't want a rival on the dark side.
Yeah.
And I wish they kind of stuck with that longer, where you have the First Order now fighting the old Empire. And I thought that was like, that idea kind of surprised me, because I just assumed like Kylo Ren would immediately side with the Emperor. And so I was intrigued by that idea, which it doesn't last long. They align very, very quickly, but
Yeah. So you didn't like it from the get-go.
Well, I didn't like it because the movie didn't want me to like stay in any scene. You guys alluded a little bit to being rushed and scenes were too fast. It was like it had the right idea to start in the middle of a scene where the action's at its like kind of at its peak, but then as soon as we get some sort of like information, we move on immediately to the next scene, which is in the middle of its action. And so we keep doing that over and over again. So I don't really have I liked the potential for when Adam Driver goes to see Palpatine.
I believe that's how it's pronounced. Yes, Palpatine.
It's close, like Clementine, but
he's also Italian.
Palpatine.
Fucking come down and have some Sunday gravy with me, Kylo. Come on, man. Let's talk about this.
Hey, we started the.
Thank you.
Wow. I invite you to my Sith ceremony. As you come to the day of my granddaughter's Sith wedding.
It's a coronation of his Sithness. So it's like.
So I liked. I mean, it looked really good. The movie looks really nice, and
Yeah.
Visually, I thought for the most part, I was pretty. I think they did a really good job, and there were some. There's some we can talk about, but there's some things I did like specifically, but I felt kind of like gross. It was a very hollow movie, and all the emotional beats that they try to hit were quite disturbing. I just want to be very specific about one thing. When C-3PO is going on his mission, he has to like reveal the Sith language or whatever. Some bullshit. He's got to get the thing so that they can unlock the thing to get the other thing. But he's saying, like, they're debating about whether he should lose his memory, and then he says. He's looking at them all.
He walks away.
He has his moment. The camera pushes in.
Yeah.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir. At my friends.
The movie's supposed to be saying C-3PO is the movie, and we're just all, as an audience, trying to remember this for the last time. All our friends. But none of the characters are friends.
Right.
We don't like any of these people. We don't care about any of these people.
Like Poe and Rey just had met each other literally at the end of the last movie.
Exactly. And had no interaction really in the beginning of this one. It was just like, they're friends now. Don't worry about it.
So it's just like, it's just because the movie wants us, or the script tells us to, like, they're friends.
It's manipulative.
Well, I agree that the movie is hitting beats it hasn't earned yet. Where this scene is supposed to be like, oh, C-3PO hasn't been like just like background noise for the last two movies. He's been like interacting with his characters. It's assuming that, which it hasn't been the case.
Very front heavy,
Yeah, and then like basically they play off of like Poe acts exactly like Han Solo in regards to C-3PO, and it basically is playing off of that dynamic to kind of like hit that familiarity of it.
Yes.
And you're just like, oh, it's just, the goofy robot and the rebel kind of clashing with each other.
It's like when you run out of that dank, and so then you end up like scraping your pipe.
The resin?
Yeah, the resin, and then you take a hit, and it's like charred and ashy and tastes awful, but it still gives you like just a little bit of a buzz to where you're like, this was worth it.
Star Wars.
This was a great choice on my part.
That's a great way to describe Star Wars.
It's Star Wars.
Yeah, this whole trilogy is basically like one tarry, ashy bowl of resin compared to the dank nugs of the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes away. Trademark that shit, dog. Bang, 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 bang. It's going to be all the things you just said.
Okay, cool.
This movie goes away from the Rian Johnson bullshit, which is subverting expectations, and it says we want to return to the original flair of what made Star Wars good, is the adventure, the excitement,
Pals.
the romance, all that stuff.
Oh baby.
But then there's none of it, and it's jam packed with all this bullshit and all this action and all this. We gotta, these plans and these plans and these plans. It's like you miss major points of like what the heart of a movie is, but you kind of confuse yourself in the specifics.
It just leans so hard on all of the familiar Star Wars elements. Like the score was one thing that stood out to me quite a bit in terms of like how they would often use this old score that we're all so familiar with, that we love, to try and like stir up emotions as well. And in these otherwise emotionally hollow scenes. Like when Leia, her theme comes in, you know, when she like sacrifices her life to make Kylo Ren turn around for a second, and like you hear her theme come in and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that song, and that's a good song and I like that a lot, and I'm connecting with this.
She was fine in the first half of the movie, and then all of a sudden she's like hobbling off.
Dies,
like,
yeah.
this is my last chance to do something.
They ran out of footage.
And they ran out of footage, but it was so obvious that it was like her lines were so general in terms of like we need to win this battle, General. Like we need to do this to
Like,
win
they
the
clearly
war.
just had like her like, okay, next one.
Yeah.
Next one. Like
Leia must have like
B-roll.
She must have like OD'd on one of the earlier films and was like, okay, when you get healthy, we're reading all this shit.
All of these lines.
You're not going to survive.
That would
this.
imply that they had some kind of plan, though, Josh, which they obviously did not. And I was worried about her involvement in the film because she obviously passed before it went into production. And I was thinking like it would be funny if they did a Weekend at Bernie's thing with Leia, where like Poe and Finn are walking around with Leia, and they go up to the Resistance, and they're like, the General says we have to attack this, and they get her to like no.
General Leia, are you okay?
That's fucked up.
Yes.
Confronting fear. It's the destiny of a Jedi.
You know what J.J. Abrams kind of posted cringe was the flashback to Luke training Leia to be a Jedi.
That was so bad.
It was so weird and unexpected, but they were like, well, why would Leia be training Rey to be a Jedi?
Yeah, she had no aspirations to be a Jedi at any point in the,
so
the original
at one
trilogy.
point, Luke and Leia just had like pilot helmets with shields on so you can't see fighting each other, and then she felt something and she had to stop.
So Leia's training Rey in the beginning of the film, but then we don't find that out until 2 hours later. So it's like the order of that. Why couldn't Leia tell Rey, like, Luke was training me all this time, and then Luke reveals the sword at the end, and then it's like, oh, there's boom boom, you have two direct threads.
That rascal Ryan Johnson killed off Luke.
No, I mean Leia says, she mentions that Luke was training Leia a long time ago.
This is like right after the Return of the Jedi or something like that.
Right, no, but
they're CGI like characters basically in the scene.
So why don't they have that moment in the beginning? And then Luke in his ghost body, which he shows up as a ghost, you know, says, here's the sword. Like, you don't need to have that stupid scene at the very end because it just feels like tacked on. Just like an editing thing. Just put that in the beginning.
Sure. I mean, they could have rearranged some scenes. Maybe Disney will hire you as a script doctor.
Oh yeah, they will. I'm easily in.
Yeah, I'm sure that you are.
I'm super
for
qualified.
Sale. Like, there's no question you would
absolutely
lower yourself to
pennies
be working
on
on this tribe. Yes. No, I mean, like, there's so many things you could pick apart with this movie, from the dialogue to the acting to the structure of the story.
Yep.
To the emotionally hollow beats that it hits, to the just naked plea for nostalgia, like just the idea, like, don't you remember the X-Wing? Remember when Yoda pulls the X-Wing out of the swamps in Dagobah? Well, now Luke, as blue guy Luke, is going to pull the X-Wing out of the water on his weird island.
It's CGI now, though.
It's CGI now. And poor Mark Hamill, like, it reminded me of The Irishman, seeing him, because, like, his body is so small, like, he's shrinking as we all do in old age, and, like, his face is old, and it was just pathetic. And like at least Luke had a personality of some kind in Last Jedi, even if it was contrary to his like character. But
right.
I mean, they're 20 years too late to do a sequel to the Luke Skywalker movies, because he looks nothing like he did.
No.
Leia doesn't look anything like she did.
Well, I mean,
and
Mark Hamill
Han-
quickly didn't look like what he used to. Like in the 90s, he was done.
And in
Yes.
this one, they introduce what's his name?
Harrison Ford.
No,
Oh yeah, Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams.
Lando
BD.
Calrissian.
As Lando Calrissian, which I was gonna say in the car, but I caught myself. He actually hits his beats pretty well still. Like, he sounds like himself. Like, even as an 80-year-old man, he's like,
Yeah, Chewie.
Chewie.
Actually, that was like when one of the pulls where the motor started to get going was when Chewie and Lando
Right.
first were kind of. I got, there's a little bit of that magic, but then he gets into the stilted dialogue of like, so we found where the Wayfinder was, and it's on the Dajibi system.
Me and Luke came here together after. I don't know why he's Bill Cosby all of a sudden.
Came to get the pudding,
That's okay. You don't
and
need
we
to do that.
drugged the women.
So yeah, we can talk about the movie all day long and nitpick, and it's generally just bad. I was wondering what you guys thought about this insistence from Disney and Star Wars, and I guess just in general, like these big, huge cinematic universes on like catering towards grown men, and like Star Wars is like, as you were saying earlier, is like not for kids anymore. Like, kids don't like it. But I think it's because like these grown, like 40-year-old men have like really harnessed that and like have not let anyone else enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And so they fought back against The Last Jedi, and now they're like, okay, fine, we'll make these old men older, sorry. And it's like, you're losing the whole point of what Star Wars was, which was like this fun fantasy adventure.
This pulpy, like, so it was based on these old pulp adventures. Mm-hmm. Like these, serialized novels and all that stuff, and Flash Gordon and George Locust took that and made something kind of fun out of that.
Bug asthma.
that had good characters, and it had a solid heart to it, and a real sense of adventure and danger and love. And by the way, this movie couldn't be more sexless if it tried. There are 2 kisses in this movie, one between
I'm sorry, I ejaculated during both kisses. So.
yeah.
Nice.
There was a lesbian kiss, which was definitely part of the SJW agenda.
Spoilers!
And then we already said spoilers. And then, of
Extra
course,
spoilers.
there's the kiss between Rey and Kylo Ren, none of which is romantic
Or warranted
though,
at all.
or warranted in any way.
Yeah.
Like, and that goes back to what I'm saying about Bleach. Like, this movie is sanitized in every single way. You're not supposed to be jizzing in your seat the way that these motherfuckers that were in the theater did.
You think? Okay.
The kind of nod to the 2 women are kissing at the end because people were like, Finn and Poe they have to be in a relationship, because that was like a big fan thing where it's just like, there's chemistry between them that's obviously romantic.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and J.J. Abrams was like, no,
But here's 2 chicks.
yeah, exactly, 2 chicks kissing in space,
Nice, am I right?
lesbians in space.
But like, is that the way movies should go? Is
No.
like big franchises? They're already crowd pleasers, but are they going to be specific crowd pleasers?
Just because you can film something doesn't mean it should be in a movie. You have to kind of lay some groundwork for it, develop an idea, and then put it in a movie.
Yeah, establish a tone. Like, that would really help if they established a tone for the movie.
I'm not saying the movie's good. I'm just saying there's a narrative before the movie came out that J.J. Abrams is retconning everything. Don't worry about the Last Jedi.
Are you referring? Okay, Last Jedi. Okay.
So people are already going into this, these fanboys, expecting that we're going to get our old Star Wars back.
And that's exactly.
And that's why they're coming out to see it. They know they're cornering in on that audience.
They know that J.J. Abrams is making an apology of a movie, basically. Like, sorry for The Last Jedi. Sorry we upset you. Here is the cleanest, safest possible Star Wars product we could deliver to you.
There's so many different scenes where, like, when Rey is healing the little snake.
I forgot about that stupid scene.
Which is like, for me, I just visualized.
They had to set it up.
The big gross snake was like all the old fat fans of Star Wars, and they're wounded by Last Jedi, and Rey is J.J. Abrams, and she just, oh, it's okay, we're gonna make it all better for you,
and then they settle down to a whimper
I'll go
and
home now.
clear the way for Disney to make $2 billion at the box office.
Yeah.
Move their rolls out of the way of the Star Wars.
I genuinely thought that was like a nod, or like some sort of cynical, like, okay, here, it's gonna be all better now. Here's
That's a
remedy.
great thought. I really like that.
It was a setup for later when
she heals Kylo after she stabs him on the. I had so many thoughts in this movie of like the best part from the Phantom Menace Plinkett review, where they would always cut to the George Lucas. Oh, and there's kind of cheating because then it just says, and then they fight, because there are so many, and then they fight moments in this movie. Like, I mean, that are visually stunning. The waves are crashing on the wreckage of the Death Star, and they're having a lightsaber fight, but there was never any stakes established. Like, we didn't know why they were fighting other than that they like had to fight because they were face to face. Like, it reminded me of the amazing scene at the end of Empire Strikes Back, you know, after Han's in the carbonite and Vader thinks that he's won and Luke shows up and they have that awesome darkened lightsaber battle in Cloud City, and that like weird and that had like tension and stakes, and there was like this established relationship between the two characters that was coming to a head there, and then the movie ends on this like crazy cliffhanger.
Literally. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but Luke doesn't confront Vader until the very end of this movie, right?
Of Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, sorry, Empire Strikes Back, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, so he's just building. So the whole movie's building up to him coming, but in the Rise of Skywalker, Rey and Ren, Finn, Poe, they battle like 5 times, and it's like there's no tension anymore because we've seen them go at it, and it's like
the idea that they have this like weird temporal plane that they can meet on no matter what location they're in totally kills any kind of suspense or tension that they could build up towards their like actual face-to-face reunion, because they're fighting in these things, and like objects in each of their realities are being manipulated and destroyed by their lightsaber battle. So it's just like, okay, yeah, and then they fight.
If you look at this as a trilogy, they've actually done that really poorly, because they have these group of characters they've failed to develop, and they've kind of done that because they have failed to have them face adversity together, and the face of that adversity has just like changed a lot. Like, you had Snoke in the first couple films, and all of a sudden he's abruptly killed, and in this one it's just like not in the text scroll, it's all of a sudden, well, Palpatine's back because we have to have a baddie,
because he has to be.
And then Palpatine's trying to explain Snoke. He's just like, I was Snoke all along. And then like you see just like
a vat of Snokes.
A vat of Snokes. They're just like, yeah, they're out there.
Get over it, nerds. He's a dime a dozen.
Right. And so when this ending, it just feels really hollow, like Josh was saying, and it's very unearned. When you have the Emperor, he all of a sudden he has just an audience of Sith, and what's going on here? Why do I care?
Yeah.
So the last scene, well, I guess the last act, because it's pretty long, that was the only, even though I don't like specifically what happens, I did like the pacing of it, and I felt like the tension was building to a certain point. Like, you knew you were getting to a conclusion, as opposed to just like, Rey shows up, Rey is like, I'm not bad, you're bad, and then Kylo shows up, and then fight. Like, usually that's how the rest of the movie was going. Instead, there's slow ambiance, and it's like, okay, I get it.
You had the false ending there, so to speak, of like, oh no, they're both on the ground, they're both defeated, he's back, and this small force is now no match for all of these Star Cruisers. Is that what those are called?
Star Destroyers.
Star Destroyers, thank you. And then all of a sudden you hear Lando like, hey there, kid, like doing the like.
Oh, never alone.
Oh, by the way, the scene where Chewie expresses his grief for Leia's passing had me
Where he
fucking
just
roll and like waving his.
He's saying, "Why, God? Why?"
It was so sad.
What was the line that was also cringe when like they're in one of the command decks of the destroyers and they're like, "What, more fighters?" And they're like, "No, they're just people."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I didn't know they had a navy.
They're just people.
It's not a navy. They're just people.
They're friends.
They both-
That was like the next place they needed
Yeah.
to take that line.
And they looked at the camera.
They're people, friends.
And then, like, I mean, Domhnall Gleeson turning out to be like a good guy all of a sudden.
But
And,
not.
look, this movie has.
And that was like his character's like has movies of like he's one of the most developed characters, if you could call it that. And all of
Right.
a sudden, it's just like he just shot off screen.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like the
Flies
cane
back.
came out and like scooped him off.
Yeah.
Screen. Done there.
Yeah.
I like Domhnall Gleeson, but he's bad in this movie.
He's bad in the whole trilogy. He's bad in the whole trilogy.
Awful.
They didn't know what to do with him. He could have been so much more.
He's an amazing actor. I
He's an
think.
amazing actor.
He's
A lot of these
incredible. I love
actors
him.
are great actors.
Yeah.
Is a thing.
That's
And-
what's so truly troubling
Ugh.
about this
I was
thing
gonna
is
say, yeah.
with all the talent. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. With all the talent involved with this, it's just amazing how bland and heartless this all is.
talent and money. If you look at the resources that this trilogy has just sucked from Hollywood, it's amazing what the finished result is.
It is. It
And how
truly is.
disappointing it is.
So,
It's hard to wrap up this
Would you-
review like wrapping up this trilogy.
right?
Yeah, at least we're coming to an end that is somewhat satisfying.
Right? Would
'Cause,
either of you recommend Star Wars Rise of Skywalker?
No, I kind of want to see Disney hurt on this one. Yeah, I think
They're not going to,
I think
unfortunately.
I think the bar is set very high. So will they like make no money? Of course not. But I think they could miss the mark here pretty far. And will that cause them to change anything? You know, like I would hope so. But
It'll be interesting to see if they go back to ground after this one and like let this thing breathe a little bit. Give us a couple years before the next one and actually have a plan.
well, they've
going
definitely
into
already
it.
kind of like set it in that direction where like there's no movie planned next. It's okay. You have this Obi-Wan TV series, and that's really the only thing that's on the plate at this moment. They scrapped a lot of stuff.
As you should. Josh, would you recommend it? No. Addison, would you recommend it?
No.
All right. See you
and-
guys.
No. I
I
got
just wanted to do a false ending.
So I wrote a paper once, and it was called "How Star Wars Brought About the Decline of Western Civilization." And in that
None of
paper,
that's going in, not a word.
none of that's going in. No, like I said at the beginning, this movie made me feel a lot of things. Nothing of what it intended or hoped that I would feel. It made me feel sad for everyone in the audience who was being manipulated by its pandering bullshit. For this being like a standard of any kind for the entertainment that we consume and that we find acceptable. Like, I won't go so far as to say that this was an insult, but this movie definitely is, to me anyways, a dark harbinger of where we are.
Harbinger.
And at the risk of being pedantic and condescending, I would probably leave it at that. But this movie made me sad. And not sad because the trilogy's ending. Not sad because the gorgeous, talented Adam Driver dies at the end. Just sad that this is what we pay $10+. I mean, we're part of the Cinemark Movie Club, so we only pay $10 for these tickets. But people paid fucking $15 to $17 to see this movie. And
How much a movie cost?
how much a movie really cost. And then they had to sit through, no joke, like an hour of straight previews, if you count the before show entertainment. They even had, previews and commercials. They even had commercials dotted in between the previews. Like they knew what a captive audience they had, and they didn't give a shit. And they just pandered and advertised and pandered and advertised. And then we sat through this other 2.5 hour long thing that was its own advertisement for its own darker thing. And
It was a big ad for 23andMe. Who's your father? Who's your grandfather?
you're a Palpatine.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Well, anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Please email us to behonestcast@gmail.com. And we wish you a very, very happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, a healthy New Year, safe. Let's demand better, people. Demand better. Bye. You do it.
This is normal. This is very normal.